Hi, welcome to Ideaspring's Founder in Focus series. This is Naganand, a managing partner at Ideaspring. And today I'm in a conversation with Professor Siva Umapathy about his startup, which is called Gyrophint. It will be great to have a discussion with him on how his journey as a professor and now as an entrepreneur. And without much delay, Prof, welcome.
Thank you.
To the podcast. Lovely to have you here. So basically, I would like to cover two aspects very shortly on what you did in IISc as a prof over the past 40 years.
Sure.
And then transition to what you're doing now, which is where I think the focus will be. But quickly, your background in IISc as a prof, what was your area of focus and what then made you take certain research and then forced you to say, I have to build a product around this?
Okay, so I was in UK. So I remember Professor Siva was the director of the institute at that time, and Professor Krishnan was the dean. So when I was in the lab at Rutherford Labs in Oxfordshire, suddenly phone rang. I pick up, and Professor Krishna was on the line, and he said, "Are you Dr. Umapathy?" I said, "Yes. My name is Professor Krishna. I'm a dean in Indian Institute of Science. Professor Siva has asked me to speak to you. Would you like to come back to India?" And that was the start in 1988, I think, 88, 89. And then, of course, after that, it was all negotiations and biodatas. And by January, February 90, I had an appointment letter. So I came and joined in November 90, December 90. So basically, I was invited to set up a laser spectroscopy group. Particularly with the time resolution. That means how to watch chemicals move to make reactions, basically. Nobody in India was doing that at that time. And so we used two laser pulses, one to initiate the reaction, and the second one is to watch. And that's where we started, the whole game started. And I think 10, 15 years, I was working purely on computation, theory, and experiments. And I have to say, I was at the right time, at the right institution. 90s where funding was not an issue. I mean, I got enough funding. I can never complain about research funding. And so we managed to do well, both nationally and internationally. And so I received this Bhatnagar Prize in 2004. And I was thinking about next level of challenges, because I always tell people that as you grow more experienced, the level of risk you take in research get to higher. Then only your experience can contribute to new thing. I tell my younger colleagues the same thing. So I was thinking that, and when we went to that Bhatnagar Prize function, there was a dinner organized, and there's large number of politicians, administrators, all of them. And this first question they ask, why did you get the prize? And there is a citation which tells you that contribution to laser spectroscopy, understanding chemical dynamics and stuff. And of course, that's too much jargon for them. So they ask you, what do you do? And how much does it cost? And then they always end up with this question, what is the use for us? And that kind of hit me hard. And then that also happened on the way back on the flight with somebody who was sitting next to me. So started making me feel uncomfortable in a way, because the lasers were very expensive those days. And I was looked upon as somebody who had received a lot of funding, but, mostly for basic research. So I was telling my friends, and then they said, why don't you give a lecture in the Division of Biology in IISc? So I gave a lecture in the Division of Biological Sciences, and we started working on biomedical challenges. Then it realized that we started with animal models, and then we started working on getting signals from disease-related body fluids. At the same time, what happened was, because I was working on lasers and detection, I was asked to chair a committee to detect explosives and narcotics in Delhi, which I chaired a committee. And then there I met the director of DRDO, who said, people like you should work with us. So that started in 2007, 2008. And there the first question was, if some baggage is left somewhere, can I see what is inside? That was the question. And so I said, we'll try. So then I said, okay, we started thinking about how light can penetrate boxes and bottles and stuff like that. So, of course, what we are looking at is Raman scattering, but the world, people have been doing it, firing beam into sky, looking at, particles in the air in kilometers. So then I told my students, go and look at what happens in long distances, what is the information they're deriving. So we did some Monte Carlo simulation. And of course, the Monte Carlo simulation, for example, what you're seeing in echogram and other ultrasonic scanner and all that, the frequency doesn't shift. What you input is what you get back. But what we are measuring is the frequency is shifting. And the frequency shifting depends on the system you're looking at, the amplitude and the frequency. So we had to rewrite the Monte Carlo equation a little bit, and then I suddenly saw there was a potential of being able to see signals in a simulation. Then we designed particular items, and of course the rest is history. We filed a few patents, and then we made a couple of instruments for HEMR in Pune, a DRDO institution. And then there is a DBEL, which is a biomedical engineering lab in Bangalore. That director, Dr. UK Singh, now he is the Director General of DRDO. He was extremely excited, saying, look, I'm glad some professor is making instrument. So then we made that. That's how we got into this. Having done that, of course, there is always colleagues like Vijay Chandru and others who have shown examples of professors becoming entrepreneur. And I was asked by my colleagues, look, you have already 2 instruments. Why don't you do a startup? So my immediate thought process was startup because we had a patent on sepsis. So I started with that. Then they said, look, why not the security as well? So that's why we started. Then the institute said, look, we'll help you to get going. My biggest problem is finance. I don't understand finances because for me, the salary comes, it goes into the account, they give form 16, I fill up the IT, So there was nothing to do with calculating. But then when I started, then I was telling this to my brother, saying, look, I'm thinking about this. He just retired as a general manager from Canara Bank. So I asked him, why don't you take care of the finance side? I don't know about GST, PF, IT and all that. But because he is from banking, he understood all that. He said, okay, I'll help you. So because of him, because money is something I'm very sensitive about because you can't make mistakes, irrespective of what you do. And so, coming from a very middle class background, for us, we don't want to make a mistake. And so because he came on, I felt a bit more confident. IISc gave us some startup grant and we started building the first instrument. And of course, thanks to you. And you appeared in the scene, and which gave us more confidence. And then now we have completed the trial.
So what was your biggest apprehension in kind of from the role change from being a professor to an entrepreneur? What were some of your? No, I know you're very comfortable with technology and science and research and other things. You're very comfortable, but transitioning to the role of a founder / entrepreneur, what were some of your biggest apprehensions?
I would say two things. Number one was the rules of Government of India of running a company. I had no understanding of that. That was worrying to me enormously because, if something you make a mistake, what will happen to you? That is the first. The second thing is that the biggest, as I got into it, having registered the company, and IISc helps introducing to investors like you, and you're trying to make presentations. I couldn't convince any of them, and I'm beginning to feel that something is not right. So I felt I would not be able to convince investors of what it can do, and whether deep tech investors in India are having the patience as the West has 10 years, 5 years, 8 years incubation period of an industry. I remember discussing this even in government meetings. The risk-taking capacity in India is pretty low. As our culture, because we come from a middle class, we are always protected, saying, watch out, don't waste it, don't do this, So I think it has been with us even in our own culture, in our industrial. If you look at last 75 years, one of the things I feel bad about is we don't have a single technology we can sell to the world. After 75 years. And we have at least many people won Nobel Prizes in this country. And so that's something I started feeling doubtful. And of course, LRN came into the picture, and then he said, look, you have to tell them how you will make money, because how will they know your science is path-breaking? That they will not understand. They are not in the field. But they have to know how that is going to convert into money. And that I learned from him, LRN and Vikram and the team. And then they helped them shaping up the presentations. So those are the two aspects of about a year I struggled. I mean, 21 to 22, 20, year and a half, I started feeling.
But you didn't give up?
No, of course not. That is something I've never done in my life. I mean, that's something, once if I take up, I will not give up easily. That's something I said, because I feel like that's a testing time for myself to see, am I capable? Even self-discipline, I always continue to check, am I committed to the discipline that I mean? So that somehow, even when I was young, when somebody, my dad says something, I let, double check, am I right? Can I do what I cannot do? So that's something that always with me. So that I won't give up. But the point was that the frustration is what will happen, that anticipation. That was the biggest setback. I think most professors will have that, because I learned in the process of, I must have made 40 presentations. And to convince somebody that it is worth investing is probably the most difficult part in becoming an entrepreneur. And after that, the rest of it is, now that you have a big responsibility on your shoulder of an investor's fund and converting into money for them back, it's a secondary problem, secondary pressure that you work on. Every day worry about it. That's what it is. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you something that's a little controversial, because one of the things VCs look at is the age of the founder.
Right.
And rightfully so, many a times. Because they say, do you have the enthusiasm, same level of enthusiasm?
Right.
Can you give it 60-hour weeks for an extended period of time? Right. Can you change your habits? Right? Because what you have been and what you need to do for a founder can be very different. So the general thesis is, once you cross a certain age threshold, watch because of all this. There's baggages that one carries, right? And I went through the same, in looking at Gyrophint and in talking to you. But I found that enthusiasm in you saying, no, Prof, you'll overcome that, and probably I'll not bucketize you in that category. I'll be bucketizing you in a different category. So as a person, now having retired from IISc recently and now starting a journey as a founder and an entrepreneur, how do you see yourself, transitioning and then undergoing all the pain that's... Entrepreneurship is fun in one way, but it's very, very hard in the other way.
Yes, it is.
So what has been the largest challenge you have faced in this transitioning from being a professor, teaching in an institute? I call IISc a walled garden. It was lovely environment in a tree, amongst the trees, whatever, to out in the real world. So how do you see that, handling the transition in yourself?
I see, one thing is that for me, exploring anything new has always been exciting. I wake up at 4 o'clock thinking about what I need to do today, because something new I always done that, and that's been my blood, I guess, because as a researcher, you're always searching for answers for many things, including in business. That's what I've seen in the last year and a half interacting with people. The second thing is that you've always been a boss, right? So being a professor means that you tell people what to do, and then you listen to what they have to say. Now I have to do that for somebody else. So, I mean, when I go to sit with meetings with BCAS or with Bangalore Airport, or, our own day-to-day activities, now I'm defending myself. So, which means I'm calibrating. As much as I ask my students, have you thought about what is your contribution this week? I evaluate to see what have I done this month. Have we made sufficient progress? Are we, so this is something I transform into my team, the people who are working with me. And I've always told them that every Friday you need to think about what you did this week. And I want to report at the end of 3 weeks what you have done in this month. That even now we are doing it. Because it not only makes you self-conscious of your own contribution, of moral values and stuff, but also tracks you as to, are you in the right direction? Are you making the right progress? Are we spending too much time on something that is not immediately translatable to a business? So those days I used to suddenly, it happened in the last 3-4 months. We found something interesting. So one of my guys were more keen on to explore. I had to shut him up and said, no. We are not doing research here. Don't forget, it's somebody else's money and we need to make sure we convert it into a product. So we stopped that. In the past, because, government funding is there for research, I find that exciting. I said, okay, you concentrate, let somebody else do something else. But that's something now we are pulling back. So refocusing continuously.
There's a sharp focus has to be there.
Continuously. Exactly. And that's a big difference, I guess. Which is also because we know our objective is something else, not publishing papers or things down.
But I've always found you very open to learning, because you're telling me like there's lots to learn in being an entrepreneur, and
correct.
I've seen you very open.
I can tell you, I'm watching YouTube on go-to-market. I mean, my wife is saying, what is wrong with you? You're sitting and listening to AI podcast or go-to-market or Stanford Marketing 101. I mean, it's there, I'm sitting and watching because I want to learn, what is these MBA guys do? And what is that? How can I learn something so that I may not be an expert? At least when they speak to me, I understand the language that they speak.
Very important.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Very important. Great. So now coming more towards the product and the science behind what you're doing, right? So this is your comfort zone. I think it's very easy, not to say that others were hard, but this will be up your alley. So tell me like, how you took some aspects of the research you have done and then productize that to certain markets, why you believe that you can sell in those markets that you're in, and how is the tech so differentiated compared to anything else in the world?
Okay, so one of the things, when we started with detecting chemicals which are in hidden boxes, my original intention actually was to have non-invasive imaging of human body where the chemical composition changes in your body, which reflects the symptoms of disease. For example, if it is a cancer, the cancer cells at a location, which we have studied already, not only changes in shape, but also the chemical composition of the cells change. And therefore, I was thinking that you're doing MRI now, or functional MRI. Both of them are only looking at density of liquids, density of water you're sending. And if you look at X-ray, it does the same thing, density. None of the existing techniques, unless you take and do a chemical reaction, will tell you that something has changed. That's why doctors take blood and send it for troponin or CRT and things like that. And therefore, I wanted to look at it that way. When I looked at it that way, if you look around the world, people are doing it using HPLC, GC, other techniques whereby you can look at the chemical composition of anything. Then what happened was I started thinking that what if the complexity of samples you're looking at is much larger than normal? So we started bringing in AI into it. In 2015, 15, we started AI in because to me, I've heard a few lectures of my friends in computer science and aerospace engineering talk about frequency analysis. To me, an image where you look at RGB combinations with images, with amplitudes. So I took an MTech computer science person and said, come. I wanted to think that my signal is exactly like an image. There you're looking at RGB as individual frequencies and relative ratios, which comes in individual frequencies and the amplitudes of each one. Now the permutation combinations is what you're trying to separate in high resolution images. That's what I'm also doing, except mine is a light scattering signal. I also have frequency on the x-axis, amplitude on the x-axis. It's a hyperspectral imaging. You have three-dimensional image. 2-3 years later, we were getting fantastic data. I was really very happy that we could. So we started publishing papers, one of the very few first people in the world to publish AI in spectroscopy. So that made me realize now I can start looking for unknown stuff. So that made me then start getting into this, where nobody in the world has that step ahead in terms of using AI to identify. And this is where that security thing came up. For example, once if we train AI to recognize a property of a material, a typical property of material is engrossed into the, for example, RDX or TNT, or they all have a certain physical property and a chemical property, which leads to the response function, which is basically an explosion or burning, things like that. So we train the AI in that. Therefore, even if you come up with a new explosive, our system will come and say suspicious. Because if you go and click on the details of why it is suspicious, he'll tell you it has similarity to these explosives. And this is also true for narcotics, fentanyl families. Now, fentanyl have different families. Right now, existing method has to be exactly matched with the existing system. In our system, even if you make a new fentanyl family, he'll come and tell you suspicious close to a fentanyl family. Then you know you have serious suspicion. So that is the reason why we decided to go into this, because we saw the potential of this. Then I said, look, this will be now commercially will be useful. And so let us start doing it. That's the reason why we agreed to move into this, because without the AI, we'll be the same as the rest of the world. I don't think we'll.
So the combination of using Raman spectroscopy and AI is where you're saying
Correct.
Gyrophint's product will be very, very differentiated.
It will be completely different.
And even in Raman spectroscopy, the research that you have done over the past 20, 25 years, that's carried over to this startup, right? And what is the differentiator there?
There are two kinds of differentiators. One is, for example, when you measure light signals, you also have other signals coming with it. You have relay scattering, you have background noise, you have light from other sources. Now, that requires certain methods of mathematical formulation of signal analysis to delineate unwanted signals from what signal. So that's something that we are quite popular. Some of our papers are well cited around the world. People use them even today. And in addition to that, we came up with a technology where the scattering is a 360-degree phenomenon. Traditionally, Raman signals are always measured at 90 degree or 180 degree, which means you are actually wasting another some 250 to 80 degree of light. So our intention was, these are the patents that we have. We found methods by which you can collect signals on 360 degrees, and that gives you signal to noise ratio much, much higher than what others can do. And therefore, biological samples, for example, are very difficult to get signal on, because if you increase, the signal intensity is directly proportional to the light you put in. And since lasers are with high intensity, you put in more light, you're going to burn the sample. So then you have to now reduce the light. When you reduce the light, your signal is low. So this has been a problem in biological science. This is something that we managed to solve by trying to figure out that by multiple frequencies, multiple excitations, multiple collections, we can improve the signal-to-noise ratio. That's one of our patents which we base our signals on.
That's your core.
That's a core technology.
Thesis and technology. So moving from tech to markets now. So what are the use cases that you see for your products in the market? And then how do you see that market size?
So if you start with security, we have two technologies. One is
two use cases.
Which are ready for market. One is healthcare, one is a security technology. Security technology, we have, being conservative, we have already trialed at Bangalore Airport for 3 months at level 4, where the checked-in baggage is, where people carry bottles, packets in the checked-in luggage. And in the X-ray machine, when they suspect that this looks like maybe explosive, maybe flammable, something, they ask the passenger to come and explain what this is. Right now, it's a conversation between the screening expert and the passenger. And for example, one example is that somebody has a painter, was carrying his paints, of course. Along with it, he had a white bottle with a water-like liquid. So they asked him what this is. He said, no, I use it for painting. But he never said what it is. Right? So our instrument came and said it is flammable. And then the officer said, look, why does it say flammable? I mean, what is this? Then he said it is a thin air. Right? He admitted. So then they said, look, we can't let a flammable liquid to be carried in a bottle like this. So they allowed him to do that. So that kind of thing, you know. So similarly, for example, somebody was carrying Amritanjan to tell you the sensitivity of our technology. So they said, okay, let's just check what it is. And ours came and said flammable. Then that guy said, no, I use it for my pain. It smells Amritanjan as well. So we said, look at what is inside. Why does my system come and say suspicious flammable? We look at the detail, it says camphor. So obviously camphor, I don't know what percentage it is there, so it triggered that. Now then it's a call by the officers to take a call. Of course, Amritanjan will have camphor, and therefore you let them carry. So things like that. So that trial clearly told us that it is extremely useful to the airports, not only to the airport, but also shipping ports, any border securities, you know, whether it is northern border or the eastern border, western border, across Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, all these, Myanmar. These technologies will be extremely useful because, you know, my understanding from the defense forces is that children's, old women cut across the border, they carry packets and bottles, and you never know whether they're carrying drugs or explosives. And because they are children and stuff, many a times they can't have too much conversation and let them go. A technology like that takes less than 5 seconds to scan. You know, they can say, bring the bag here, show me what is in that box, they can scan it. And if the alarms, you pick them, otherwise you send. So hopefully it should penetrate security forces and also all the airports on the shipping ports. So potential market, you can see how it is. Being the first in the world.
And at Bangalore airport was very helpful.
Successful, yeah. It's a demonstration.
And they also let, I was very thankful that they let you to do the pilot test.
I'm grateful that, I think it's also the visionary of the Bangalore airport leaders. They wanted to try out a new technology and they actually front-ended us and they wrote a letter to the ministry seeking approval for trialing this technology.
And that's what we need more in India.
Correct.
To try out this.
Exactly. And the regional director of Bangalore Civil Aviation Authority, Bureau of Civil Aviation, who was also very positive, helped us to design. And I have to thank Bangalore Airport because they even sent the screeners who are actually doing it in the lab to come and spend time with us, telling us what would be an ideal design for an instrument like that. What kind of probe you should have, where should be the buttons, and then the software, what options should we have?
They became your design partner.
Almost. I mean, it's nothing like developing a technology with the users telling you what they want. So that was the great advantage. And so that we use. So that is, I think it's a great thing. Sepsis, being an AI model, right now I have to thank Spurs Hospitals, Dr. John Paul, who has been spearheading this with us. We got about 2,000 samples. Out of that, only about 200 to 250 are real sepsis because they also don't know. Right? So they're collecting samples and then only 3-4 days later, they come to know whether it is sepsis or not. And so we would like to, so the AI model gives about 90 to 95% randomly, of course, depending on the sample accuracy. But, before we go to actual market, we would like to hit at least 2,000, 3,000 sepsis samples.
But what is your false negative ratio? In this
being less than 3%. Because, see, there I can tell you, for example, there are cases where somebody has serious inflammation, but because they were having serious lung issues, it came out as false or positive. And anyway, doctor said they need antibiotics, so it doesn't need. And there was one particular case that was very exciting for us and the doctor as well. he said it is no sepsis. We found sepsis. And so when we meet regularly, so one of the meetings, I said, look, how come we are predicting sepsis, but you said no sepsis? He said, give me a day, I'll come back to you. So next day he called and said, you know, Prof, you're correct. I'll tell you why you predicted sepsis. This person came on a kidney failure. So we wanted to check whether it is serious inflammation leading to kidney failure or is some other cause. Because it is some other cause, organ failure is always treated as sepsis. So you predicted correctly, but it is not because of inflammation or infection, but because of a kidney failure. So the prediction is correct. The treatment was different. So I said, oh, good. So we are doing the right thing, which was a good learning experience for that as well. Yeah.
So hence now you're positioning the product in the market for both the security use case, contraband.
Correct. That is immediate. Yeah. I think that the contraband is ready for market now. So we are trying to now meet people, trying to go. The sepsis, probably we need another 6 months to 8 months because we want to go to more hospitals, get more samples. But before we do that, we want to consolidate our existing position. So that's a bit slow in the back burner. But we are actually spending a lot because we are right now making a backpack unit. The design is complete. Now we are going for somebody to make all the components for the backpack unit. And we are also now going to start making a handheld unit for security purposes. For VIP movements and narcotics bureau, they all want a backpack unit so that they can, with battery pack. So we are looking at 6 to 8 hours battery back support. You don't have to do anything. You just scan whether you're on the train, on a bus or whatever. If you suspect something, you can always scan it. So that is getting ready. I think it should be done in another month and a half. And then handheld will take another 2.5 months. And once they are ready, I think the market will be wide open.
And then how are you looking at the market? India market, global market? What's your thought on market?
Coming from an academic background, I mean, having seen successes and failures in our research program, some of my colleagues have been saying, even the defense guys are saying, want to push the international market quickly. Even yesterday, during a conversation, somebody was saying, we should start interacting with the International Security Association and all. I think this call should be taken by a CEO who understands the field. My personal feeling is that I would like to test the market in India for 6 months, 1 year, make sure that our reputation is protected. We understand what happens really when you go into the field. Having supplied 20 machines, how does it work? How does the user experience? Are we having problems related to the technique because it's fragile or something? Things, practical issues. That's the way I look at it. But we don't know. I mean, that's my suggestion.
So hence you're looking at 6 months stability
before we go to international market.
Okay.
Then we can start the discussion with the international markets, and then start whatever testing certification required. Right now, we have done all the certifications required in India. We need not only ISO certification. Government of India says you need EC certification, EMC, EMI, plus also environmental certification and all that. All that is complete. And so now we have every certificate that needed to go into the customer area or consumer. And that's ready. Therefore, we'd like to see, I don't know, being ambitious, I can say a few hundred units sold in India and then experience that few hundred for 6 months, 8 months to see how the user's response is. Do we need to make changes? And one of the things we have done uniquely for Indian system is in the last 3 months, we have developed a Hindi software. So the training of Indian security forces are much easier to do. And we will also do multilingual and Indian. But that, I think, will evolve. But initially, we wanted to see whether Hindi works because that's the largest spoken. And, of course, we will go into other areas. For example, State Police Department. If they want to use this for monitoring drugs or explosives, we'll make them in Kannada. So they can go to Mandya, small towns, and they can still use it.
Multilingual always helps.
Correct. That's what we are thinking.
So, your vision for the company, when you think you'll be satisfied that you have built something that has made a difference, what's your vision for the company? Where do you want to take it?
So, from a technology point of view, I think that the day that our security and medical technologies penetrates the rest of the world to a point where it is cheap enough, that market is large enough, the price of systems is cheap enough, that the Africans and South American come and say, I want the Indian product. See, the Europeans can afford it. And the Americans can afford it. But I would like to see our technology. See, I'm also somebody who's sensitive about technology serving the poorest people of the world. The 2/3 of the money is with 1/3 of the world people, which is controlled by Europe and US. But 2/3 of the population has only 1/3 of the world funds, world money. So if we can make technologies which makes it relevant to these poor people and still affordable.
Yeah, because the company has to make profit in the...
Correct. Still affordable is the day I feel that I have done something for the society. At the end of the day, in the long term. That has been my technology side. Financially speaking, like we know Google, Microsoft, I want the world to know Gyrophint. And maybe now, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line, they recognize Gyrophint as an Indian product, Indian idea, Indian principle, Indian technology, which large number of people in the world can use it. It may sound too ambitious, but that will be wonderful.
I think it's perfectly valid to dream big. You're spending so much time, effort in building something and actually translating research, which is very important. It's one of the key things we are saying in India in tech and science is also translation of research into something that people can use. And that's when the time and effort you are put into all the research actually comes to fruition in bringing a product to the market. So anything else you want to say?
No, so one of the things I see that portfolios of technologies that follows the existing technology is also equally important to me. I think that big national companies. I mean, I've been consultant for Procter & Gamble, Unilever. I've seen how they operate. Even Shell, I've had projects with them. And I know the CTOs, I've met them. One thing that I feel in India, we could have done better is that big companies, large pockets, could have started R&Ds absolutely blue sky towards a product. That's something I always felt we failed. Okay? And I want Gyrophint to reach a point where I have an independent, product-oriented research center of innovation and creativity. I remember my friend who used to be the CEO here, Arun Vishwanath in P&G. I met his CTO, Nabil, when he visited India. And they were discussing about, this Oral-B toothbrush, right? They told me that one day they were walking in China. They saw that there was a toy where they saw that some guy was holding it and playing with it with a button, which is rotating the thing. And this guy suddenly said, look, why do you put a brush on it? And that transformed into Oral-B with medical things. So simple innovations, which can actually convert into a product which will be extremely useful. And that India is capable of doing, but we're not doing enough. So I feel, if Gyrophint could have an R&D which produces technology for the world, rather than adapting to it.
No, I think awesome goal. But for that, I really wish and hope that we first get into the areas that we are building products on that can then give the base to build the innovation. And then many other companies could follow it. And similarly, I talk about many other profs from IAC and other institutes, good institutes in the world to come out and do startups from their research that they have done, because that actually are bringing something to the market. There's one thing to write papers,
Of
but
course, yeah.
there's another.
It's a big
game
difference.
to bring products. So Prof, thanks for your time.
Thank you very
Lovely
much.
talking to you, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you very
in
much.
your new journey as a
Thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
and wish to see Gyrophint, like you're saying,
I hope so.
be out there saying, build for the world from India, and then being a very successful product.
That'll be nice.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.